In the heart of Manhattan, where money whispers louder than words, Victoria Ashford raised her champagne glass and made a promise she couldn't keep. The restaurant around her pulsed with the kind of laughter that only privilege can buy. Soft jazz threading through conversations about summer homes and stock portfolios, the delicate clink of silverware against porcelain that cost more than most people earned in a week. She was surrounded by friends, or at least that's what she called them. Women who wore their wealth like armor, who measured their worth in carats and square footage, who had known Victoria since prep school and would probably know her until the day she died, unless, of course, she stopped being useful. Claire Montgomery sat across from her, a real estate attorney whose Cartier watch served as both timepiece and declaration of dominance. Beside her, Sloan Whitmore, whose father owned half the commercial real estate in Midtown, and Jordan Hayes, whose engagement ring could have paid off a Tesla. They were all here for the same reason Victoria was, to be seen, to remind themselves they belonged to this world of velvet ropes and private tables, where reservations required 6 weeks' notice and a last name that mattered. Victoria had been born into this. Her father managed hedge funds. Her mother chaired charity galas at the Met. She'd attended Dalton, then Yale, then drifted into marketing because that's what pretty girls with trust funds did when they didn't know what else to do with their lives. Claire leaned forward, eyes glinting with mischief over her Pinot Noir. "So, Victoria, when are you going to stop playing around and actually settle down?" Victoria shrugged, aiming for casual, landing somewhere near defensive. "When someone worth settling for walks through that door." The table erupted in knowing laughter. Sloan smirked. "Good luck with that. Every decent man in this city is either married, emotionally unavailable, or gay." They all laughed again. It was the kind of joke they made often, light, dismissive, a way to pretend they weren't all quietly desperate underneath the designer dresses and perfect makeup. Victoria glanced toward the entrance. The doors were tall, frosted glass with brass handles polished to a mirror shine. Beyond them, Manhattan glowed under streetlights. Black cars rolled past. Valets in pressed uniforms stood at attention like soldiers. This was the kind of place where everyone who walked in looked like they belonged. CEOs with $100 haircuts, investment bankers who smelled like cologne that cost more than rent, entrepreneurs fresh from closing deals that would never touch them personally but would change lives they'd never meet. Victoria felt bold. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the way her friends were looking at her, waiting for her to say something clever, something Instagram-worthy. "Honestly," she said, her voice carrying more confidence than she felt, "I'd marry the first man who walks in right now. That's how tired I am of all this." Claire's eyes went wide with delight. "You're joking." "I'm not," Victoria said, even though she absolutely was. "I'll marry the first man who walks through that door." Sloan laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. "Oh my God, Victoria, don't say that. What if it's some old guy with a comb-over?" "Or a waiter," Jordan added, grinning. "Or someone's husband," Claire finished. They were all watching the door now. It had become a game, something to screenshot and caption later. Girls' night energy, manifesting my future husband. Victoria felt a small thrill of recklessness. She liked the attention, liked the way they were all leaning in, waiting to see what would happen next. She raised her glass. "I mean it. First man through that door." The doors opened, and Victoria's smile died on her lips. The man who stepped inside wasn't wearing Tom Ford. He wasn't scanning the room for a business associate or approaching the hostess with the easy confidence of someone who'd been here before. He was wearing a navy blue delivery uniform, rumpled from hours of movement. His name tag read Ethan. No last name, no credentials, just Ethan. There was exhaustion in the set of his shoulders, the kind that comes from being on your feet for 10 hours straight with no break in sight. In one hand, he carried takeout. In the other, his phone, checking an address. The hostess approached him with a polite smile, the kind she reserved for people who weren't dining in. He said something Victoria couldn't hear, then nodded and started walking toward the back of the restaurant. The restaurant went silent.
Victoria felt heat crawl up her neck, spreading across her cheeks like wildfire. She could feel her friends staring at her, could hear the laughter building in their throats, waiting to explode. Claire broke first. A snort escaped her, then a full laugh that turned heads at nearby tables. "Oh my God, Victoria!" Sloane covered her mouth, shoulders shaking with barely suppressed hysteria. "You have to do it. You literally just said you'd marry him," Jordan added, her phone already out, already recording. "I was joking," Victoria said quickly, but her voice came out too high, too defensive, the sound of someone trying to rewrite history in real time. "You said it in front of all of us," Claire insisted, still laughing. "You can't take it back now." Victoria watched Ethan hand the bag to an older couple who thanked him without making eye contact. He nodded, said something brief, then turned to leave. She didn't know why she stood up. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the fact that Sloane's phone was pointed in his direction, ready to capture whatever happened next. Maybe it was the realization that if she didn't do something, this moment would follow her forever. Not because it mattered, but because her friends would make it do. They'd bring it up at every brunch, every dinner party, every time she said something even remotely bold. So Victoria pushed her chair back and walked toward him. He was almost to the door when she caught up. "Excuse me." He turned, surprised. Up close, she could see the tiredness more clearly, the faint lines around his eyes, the way his jaw tightened slightly, like he was bracing for something unpleasant. A complaint about cold food? A request for extra napkins? Maybe worse. "Yeah?" said Ethan. Victoria's mind went blank. She hadn't thought this far ahead. Behind her, she could feel her friends watching, probably filming, definitely enjoying this more than they had any right to. "I just wanted to say hi," she said, and immediately regretted it. He looked confused. "Okay, hi." She forced a smile. "I'm Victoria." "Ethan," he said slowly, like he wasn't sure why they were exchanging names. There was a long, painful silence. Victoria's brain scrambled for something to say, something that didn't sound insane, but everything felt insane. This whole situation was insane. "Can I get your number?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Ethan blinked. "What?" "Your number," Victoria repeated, doubling down because there was no turning back now. "Your phone number."
He stared at her. For a moment, she thought he was going to laugh or tell her to leave him alone or ask if this was some kind of prank. Instead, he glanced past her toward the table where her friends sat. They weren't even pretending not to watch anymore. All three phones were out now, documenting this moment like it was performance art. Ethan looked back at Victoria. His expression was hard to read. Not angry, just tired, and maybe a little resigned. Like this was just another strange thing in a long list of strange things that happened when you worked in customer service. "Look," he said quietly, "I don't know what this is, but I've got 3 more deliveries tonight and my son waiting for me at home." The mention of a son hit her harder than it should have. Of course he had a son. Of course his life was more complicated than the punchline she'd tried to turn him into. Of course this wasn't just a game to him. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, and meant it. "This was stupid. I shouldn't have—" "It's fine," Ethan cut her off. But it wasn't fine. She could see it in his eyes, in the way he was already turning away, already dismissing her, already adding her to the list of people who treated him like he didn't matter. "Wait," Victoria said. She didn't know what else to say, didn't know how to fix this, but she couldn't let him leave thinking what? That she was cruel? She was. That she was shallow? She was that too. "I really am sorry," she said again. Ethan paused, hand on the door. He didn't turn around. "You want to know the worst part?" he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "It's not that you asked for my number as a joke. It's that you didn't even see me as a person until your friends were watching. I'm just another thing in the background of your life, like the hostess, like the busboy, like everyone who works while you play." And then he was gone. The door swung shut behind him. Victoria stood frozen in the middle of the restaurant, her friend's laughter echoing in her ears like a verdict. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She lay in her apartment, 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, doorman building on the Upper West Side, and stared at the ceiling. Around 3 in the morning, she picked up her phone. The video was everywhere. Sloane had posted it on Instagram with the caption, "When your friend takes a bet too far, #girls night, #no regrets." The comments were brutal.
This is disgusting. Imagine treating another human being like this. Rich people really think the world is their playground. But there were other comments, too. Comments that made Victoria's stomach turn. Comments calling Ethan a loser. Comments saying he should be grateful for the attention. Comments defending her, saying it was just a joke, saying people were too sensitive. She read every single one, and somewhere around 4 in the morning, Victoria did something she'd never done before. She posted a public apology. Not a carefully crafted PR statement written by a publicist, not a half-hearted, "I'm sorry if anyone was offended" non-apology, a real one. "I made someone the punchline of a joke tonight, and he didn't deserve it. His name is Ethan. He was working. He was tired, and I treated him like he wasn't even human, just so my friends and I could laugh. There's no excuse for that. I'm sorry." The response was immediate and divided. Some people applauded her honesty. Others said it wasn't enough. A few said she was only apologizing because she got caught. Victoria read every single one and didn't delete a single one. She'd earned every bit of criticism. The least she could do was sit with it. Her phone rang 20 minutes later. Claire. Victoria almost didn't answer, but avoiding the conversation wouldn't change anything. "What the hell was that post?" Claire's voice was sharp, cutting. "An apology? To who? Some random delivery guy nobody even knows?" Victoria felt something shift in her chest. It was subtle, like a door closing quietly in an empty room. "His name is Ethan." Claire scoffed. "Victoria, you're making this way bigger than it needs to be. It was a joke. People are acting like you committed a crime." "I humiliated him," Victoria said, "in front of strangers for no reason." "He's fine," Claire insisted. "He probably doesn't even care." "He cared enough to defend me when no one else did." There was silence on the other end. Victoria continued, her voice steady. "You know what's funny, Claire? When people were tearing me apart online, none of you said anything. Not you, not Sloan, not Jordan. But Ethan did. A guy I met for 30 seconds did more for me than any of you." "That's not fair," Claire said, defensively. "We didn't think it was that serious." "It was serious enough for you to laugh about it." "I have to go, Claire." Victoria didn't wait for a response. She ended the call and set her phone face down on the table. Her hands were shaking, not from anger, but from relief. She'd spent so long performing for people who didn't actually care about her, people who valued her as long as she played the part they expected. But Ethan hadn't disappeared. That evening, Victoria texted him, not because she had to, because she wanted to. "I posted an apology today. I just wanted you to know." His response came a few minutes later. "I saw it. That took guts." "Not really," Victoria typed back. "It was just the right thing to do." "Still," Ethan replied, "most people wouldn't have done it." They texted back and forth for a while. Not about the restaurant, not about the video, just normal things. Ethan told her about his son, Connor, about how the kid was obsessed with dinosaurs and could name at least 20 different species. Victoria told her about her job, marketing for a tech startup, lots of meetings, lots of buzzwords, not much substance. Ethan didn't judge her for that. He just asked questions, listened. It was strange talking to someone who didn't already know her, who didn't have preconceived ideas about who she was supposed to be. After a few days, Victoria sent him another message. "Can I buy you a coffee? Not as a joke, not because I owe you, just because I'd like to actually talk to you." 3 dots appeared, stayed for a long time. "Okay." And finally, Ethan replied. "But I'm bringing Connor. I don't have anyone to watch him this weekend." "That's fine," Victoria typed back. "I'd like to meet him." They met on Saturday afternoon in a small park in Brooklyn. Not fancy, just a patch of grass with a playground and a coffee cart parked near the entrance. Victoria got there early, clutching a cup she'd already finished out of nerves.
Ethan arrived a few minutes later, holding Connor's hand. The boy looked just like his father. Same dark hair, same serious eyes. He wore a t-shirt with a cartoon T-Rex on it. "Hi," Victoria said, suddenly unsure of herself. "Hi," Ethan replied. He gestured to Connor. "This is my son." Connor looked up at her, shy but curious. "I'm 7. Victoria smiled. "I'm Victoria. I'm 28. Connor seemed to find this acceptable. He turned to Ethan. "Can I go play?" Ethan nodded. "Stay where I can see you." Connor ran off toward the swings, and Ethan and Victoria walked toward a bench. They sat down, both watching the boy as he climbed and jumped and laughed.
"He's sweet," Victoria said. "He's a handful," Ethan replied, but there was warmth in his voice. "Yeah, he's a good kid." They sat in silence for a moment. It wasn't uncomfortable, just quiet. "I've been thinking about what you said," Victoria finally spoke, "about people not seeing you." Ethan glanced at her. "Yeah, I do that too," she admitted. "Not just to other people, to myself. I spent so long trying to fit into this version of who I thought I was supposed to be that I forgot to ask if I actually wanted it." Ethan nodded slowly. "I get that." "Your comment," Victoria continued, "the one you left on Sloane's post, you didn't have to do that." "I know," Ethan said, "but I wanted to." "Why?" He was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Because I know what it's like to be judged for something you can't control. And I know what it's like to make a mistake and have everyone pile on. You were wrong, but you owned it. That's more than most people do." Victoria felt her throat tighten. She looked away, blinking hard. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You already thanked me." "I know, but I don't think I really understood it until now." They talked for another hour, about work, about life, about the things they wanted and the things they were afraid of. Ethan talked about how hard it was raising Connor alone, how he worried he wasn't doing enough, how he sometimes felt invisible, like the world had decided he didn't matter because he didn't make enough money or have the right job. Victoria talked about how lonely she'd been, how her friendships felt transactional, how she'd spent years chasing approval from people who didn't actually know her. By the time the sun started to set, Connor had worn himself out. He came running back, grass-stained and grinning. "Dad, I'm hungry." Ethan stood, brushing off his jeans. "All right, let's get you home." Victoria stood too. "Thank you for meeting me." "Thanks for asking," Ethan said. They stood there for a moment, neither quite sure how to end the conversation. Connor solved it for them. He looked up at Victoria and said, "Are you my dad's friend?" Victoria looked at Ethan, who raised an eyebrow, leaving the answer to her. She smiled. "Yeah, I think I am." Connor seemed satisfied with that. "Okay, bye, Victoria." "Bye, Connor." Ethan gave her a small nod, then took his son's hand and started walking toward the parking lot. Victoria watched them go, father and son, moving through the world together. And for the first time in a long time, Victoria felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Not the fairy tale kind, not the kind that promised everything would be perfect, but the quiet, steady kind, the kind that whispered maybe she could be better, maybe she could choose differently, maybe dignity and kindness didn't come from money or status or the right circle of friends. Maybe it came from moments like this, small, honest, real. Victoria walked back to her car, pulled out her phone, and deleted Sloane's number, then Claire's, then Jordan's. She didn't need them anymore. She drove home as the city lights flickered on one by one like stars being born, and when she got to her apartment, she didn't feel the usual emptiness. She felt something else. Possibility. This story doesn't end with a wedding. It doesn't end with romance or redemption or a neat conclusion tied up in a bow. It ends with a lesson. Words matter. The things we say, even as jokes, have weight. They land on real people with real lives, people who deserve respect no matter what uniform they wear or what job they do. And sometimes the people we dismiss are the ones who teach us the most. Not because they're perfect, but because they choose kindness when they could choose anger. Because they see us when we fail to see them. Victoria learned that night that worth isn't measured in paychecks or Instagram followers or invitations to expensive restaurants. It's measured in moments, in choices, in the courage to apologize, in the grace to forgive, and in the quiet understanding that we're all just trying our best. The bet she made that night cost her everything she thought mattered, her friends, her reputation, her carefully constructed image. But it gave her something more valuable, a mirror, a chance to see who she really was, and the choice to become someone better. Sometimes the promises we can't keep are the ones that save us. Sometimes the mistakes we make are the ones that teach us what it means to be human. And sometimes a delivery driver and a woman with too much champagne and too little self-awareness can remind us of the most important truth of all. We're all just walking each other home. The least we can do is see each other along the way.
For more videos, please subscribe, like, and comment.